Again, it's Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining me. We have YouTube going on over here. We have Instagram going on over here. And another live Q&A session. I hope this one's a fun one. So, if you're joining me on YouTube, as always, there is a chat box down below. You can type into it and we can talk real time. Hey, Chris! Thank you for joining me. Excellent to have you with me. What happened to band practice? And same thing in Instagram. You can always type in and then we can chat real time. So I thought tonight's topic could be something that always comes up, and that is taking classes and continuing to improve on your skills. And I've come across a lot of paddlers that always think, oh no, why do I need classes? I'm doing just fine. I just go out on my own, or I go with a group. I just go out into the water. I'm good. I don't need to take classes. And it's crazy that now I haven't been doing this that long, but in the amount of time I've been doing it, we started with classes, and then every year there's always been a little bit of instruction that I've done. And it still feels like I am just a beginner. Over and over, I wind up going to classes and working with mentors and just realizing just how little I know when it comes to paddling. And I think what's happening is you just continue to improve, and then you seek out mentors that know way more than you do. And then each time you find out just how much you don't know, and they're able to give you these nuggets of absolutely amazing information that then just helps you continue growing. So practice was canceled today. I'm a little sick. It's like fever and a headache. I'm sorry, Chris, but at least we can chat about other stuff, and you don't have to pound away at drums when you have a headache. That's one of the worst things to do. But all right, so this weekend, my friend Jorge and I made our way up to Rhode Island. There were 3 days of instruction. Jonathan from Kayak Northeast let me know that there was a last minute thing, and then we made our way up there and we had an absolute blast. Any Jersey paddlers around? Matt is asking. So if you're a Jersey paddler, let him know that you're on here. It's always good to connect with people in your area. So the first day we worked on surfing basics. The second day we were supposed to try to find a tide race to go play in, and then conditions just didn't work out, but then really dense fog fell, and so Matt on YouTube, very local friend on Instagram is saying, yes, they're from South Jersey, you guys should connect and go paddling. Alright, good. So the second day we were supposed to go play in a tide race, and then it turned out that conditions didn't really work out, but really dense fog fell all around us. We couldn't see anything, and then it was just turned into a navigation class where we would go from point to point trying to find it in the fog, and it was absolutely an amazing learning experience. I've paddled in fog before. One time actually with my friend Jorge. We were in Casco Bay, and very dense fog fell, and we were island hopping, and it was very interesting to navigate through it. And then a couple of other times, but not really that dense. This was really dense, and it was awesome. And then the third day, we went rock gardening, and it was my very first time doing it. I had a bad experience with whitewater rafting in the past, and so I've always been kind of hesitant of rocks. And I went out with the group, and they were very supportive and really nice, and understood that I had a little bit of hesitation playing in rocks, and they embraced it. It helped me get over a lot of those fears, to the point that at one point, one of the instructors, John, had me actually jump in the water and go swimming next to the rocks so that my body could feel what the water's doing to you, depending on what the surface of the rocks and how it'll treat you if you happen to be in those positions, and how to read the type of water in different positions. It was just a stellar experience, but it continued to humble me in just how much I don't know, how much I can continue to improve by continuing to take lessons. And so, if you get anything out of this video, if you just watch it for a little while and then just cut it off, please do look for local clubs, do look for local instructors. You'd be amazed at how many things you can learn, even by just during lunch when you're sitting around and eating. You'll be just discussing things, and all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4, 5 new things that you should go home, research, learn, and then make it better for next time you're out on the water. It's superb. So if you're joining me on YouTube, as always, there is a text box down below. You can type into it and we can interact real time. If you're here on Instagram, you can also do the same thing. You should be able to type if you have questions or you just want to chat about something. Please do. Because the idea of these, I'm going to try to do them every Monday at 9 p.m. if I'm able to. It's just, I'd like to have a topic each week, and then we can just chat about it. I've been recommended a couple of topics, and I think they're all great. Next week, we might actually have a real interview with someone, as well as discussing cold water and just how to be prepared for it. I've made a video in the past, but I'd love to make another call out. Please dress appropriately, dress for the cold water. Cold water could be very dangerous if you're not well dressed for it. That's another thing. Tom, thank you for joining me. It was so wonderful. Tom just joined us as well. It was so wonderful meeting you and paddling with you, and we need to go paddling soon. I know that we live together. But let's see, Chris, when you were learning to surf larger waves, did you start in smaller baby waves, then progress to larger ones then really big ones? How did you like the polar conditions? Tom asked. And then I'll get to Chris's question. So, Tom, I loved the polar conditions. It wasn't really polar, but when John made me jump in the water and swim next to the rocks, that was also, not only was it good for me to understand what it was like being thrown around by the water, understanding green water versus white water, etc., but you felt after a couple of minutes your body start to get cold. And I had, how's it go? Hey, how's it going? Nice, thank you for joining us as well. It's so strange to have people on both YouTube and Instagram, and then the crossover is fantastic. But so Tom's question was, so another thing that was really excellent is, yes, my group and I, my friends and I, we paddled all winter. But and we did some rolling. We always put on good headgear because rolling in cold water could be dangerous to your ears. But there were very few times that people willingly jumped in the water and either did rescues or did incident management training or just something to play around and see what it feels like to be in cold water with your dry suit. This weekend, I think every paddler at some point wound up in the water on purpose and not, and it doesn't matter. The point was, it's always really good practice to continue testing your equipment to see what it's like if you got the right layers on under your dry suit, or if you're wearing a wetsuit because the water is not too cold. Same thing. Get in the water and test it, because you think you're doing a good job, but then there's times that you're there. Yeah, Jonathan just joined us and he said he got to do it multiple times. Actually, Jonathan was asked a couple of times to flip over and toss his kayak away on purpose, and every time he didn't toss his kayak away, it was right there. So the person that was there to help him get him back in his kayak was easily able to recover the kayak and get him back in the kayak. So yeah, true, you went in the water, but you should have really pushed the kayak away and made people work for it a little harder. So anyway, it was awesome getting to test my gear, seeing how the layers that I had put on, because what was really interesting is the air temperatures were high. It was in the 60s and 70 degrees, 60s and 70s Fahrenheit for air temperatures, but the water was 50, I think maybe just below 50 or just above 50. It was right around there. So you didn't want to overheat in your dry suit, but at the same time, you wanted to be dressed enough that if you were swimming for a couple of minutes, in our group, we knew that within a couple of minutes, should be quicker, we should be able to get people out of the water. But if you're swimming for a couple of minutes during an exercise, you'd be just fine. This group was very skilled. Everybody was able to do rescues and get people back safely into the boats. But still, you should dress knowing that you might have to spend a while swimming. And so you want to have the right layers. And for me, taking a long swim while I was doing something that made me very uncomfortable was really, really good practice. So Tom, to answer that, that was absolutely excellent. So Chris asked before about learning on waves. So the very first time I took a class on waves, we actually went to 4-foot swells. So they never broke. It was just very, very smooth faced. And it was the first time I was trying it, and I didn't understand, I didn't appreciate how perfect the conditions were. This was with Dale Williams in that one surf video that I put together. He took us to those, and we were actually getting a little too nervous because they felt too big. But it was very safe, lots of space below us if we were to capsize. And then eventually we went on to very small breaking waves, and that was really good practice too because I got tossed around a lot, and they didn't have a lot of energy. I didn't get hurt any time that I got tossed around, but you could very easily get hurt. So, and then this weekend, the group divided into 2 groups when we were doing. Some people went off to do, I'd say it was between, Tom, what would you say? And actually, Ken, you got tossed around a lot. I think you guys were saying that they were between 3 and 4 footers and with occasional 5 footers. I chose to stay with the group that were, our group was playing in really tiny waves. I'd say between 1 to maybe 2 footers once in a while. But it was very humbling to continue seeing, even though I've taken several classes for surfing, and any time in the limited conditions where I live, where we go surfing, I always try. It was very humbling to continue seeing just how many things I'm doing wrong in the very basics of trying to catch a wave. I understand what I should be doing, but it's very different than actually being in the seat and doing it. And during the wrap-up, Rob had a very good point, and that really stuck with me, and he said it's about seat time, it's about spending time doing it, and then that's what really got me thinking about tonight's topic, is reaching out to clubs, reaching out to people that really know a lot more than you do, paddling with them and trying to get a lot more tips, learning from them, because there is so much to learn. You might think you've been doing something for years, and then they'll just give, the mentors will just give you a tiny little bit of information, something clicks, and it's a completely different experience. So I urge you to continue going out and learning. There's a couple of more questions. I don't want to, let's see, let me go back. I know I'm missing some. ¿Cómo está el clima? Más primaveral. Gabriela, ¿qué tal, Gaby? Sí, el clima está mucho mejor. La temperatura en el aire está bastante más cálida. Está en los, diría entre 50 y 70, así que ya parece primavera y dentro de poco va a ser verano. Pero el agua sigue estando re frío. Jay, thank you for joining me. Ahí está, de 65 a 70 grados. Gracias. Tom, I missed the swim part. So the purpose of it was for you to feel the difference of between white aquamarine and green water. Tom, yes, that was exactly it. But also, wait, I also have someone saying, hello from Norway. About your last video, first learning roll capsize, stay upside down for a while to feel to get used to the water. Yes, so always spend time capsized, especially if you're doing it with a friend, someone that can help you. Getting used to being capsized is key. It's very important. Once you feel comfortable being upside down, definitely work on wet exits. Make sure you know how to exit the kayak safely. Then move on to doing other things. So Tom, yes. I've had one bad experience in the past with whitewater and rocks, and so I was very hesitant to delve really right into playing in those conditions. And I told that to Jerry and to John, and they knew about it. So what they were doing is they were trying to ease me into it every time. So while people were playing in some places, they would take me to something a little easier, and then let me work my way up in my own time to what other people were doing. And then at one point, John just turned to me and said, you know, it'd be good for you if you just jumped in and swam there for a little while. And I thought, okay, he's joking. And then, you know, he does, I mean, he kids around a lot, but when he tells you something like that with a straight face, you realize, oh no, he's serious. And then I thought, I know I'm going to be swimming near rocks at some point in the future. This is the group to be swimming with. This is the person to be getting me out of my back into my kayak if I'm swimming next to the rocks. So I jumped in, and that was exactly it. He gave me my paddle. I made my way over. It was on the other side of that one really big rock that we were playing and going around. And I went over to the green section and then felt what that was like. And then he had me move over a little bit more into the white section so that I can feel getting tossed around a little bit, but just realizing just that if you're in the right place, the water won't be doing that. Actually, yes, Jonathan is saying he has some footage of it. I can't wait to get my hands on that footage, and I think John said that he might be posting some of it too. I want to see that because it was really, really fun and very different. I wasn't expecting it, and it made the rest of the day a lot easier. So, see, that's another example. I would have never tried that. If I was on my own, I would think I need to stay in my kayak the entire time. Instead, John said, this is a great learning tool. Let's do it safely. We did it, and it gave me a completely different perspective for the entire day. And now anytime I go out and practice something similar, I'm going to be thinking back to this one lesson. And it's extremely helpful. Okay, so let me see. Good evening from cold weather from Quebec. Frederick, thank you for being here with me. Okay, you guys are talking about weather. How do you paddle out into waters while combating large wave breaks? Okay, Sam. So this was one thing that I learned a little bit of in some of my lessons. Paddling into breaking waves. I don't have a lot of experience, but I'll just give you a couple of tips that were passed to me. One, always make sure your paddle is not in front of you when you go into the wave. So what I mean is, you're paddling, the wave's about to hit on you. Make sure that the paddle is away from your face, because it's very possible, especially most people will get scared and then they'll just do this. And guess what happens if that wave hits you? Right into your face. So as you paddle, and this is something that keeps coming up over and over and over in the lessons, the only way you have control of what's going on is if your blade is in the water. So the moment the wave is going to either crash on you, or you're getting close to the wave, or you want to go over the wave, make sure the blade is in the water and you're taking a stroke as you're going into the wave. So in my class, as this was the first time I was anywhere near big waves, and I was in front of 5 and 6 footers, and some of them were breaking on us, and I was scared. I don't want to curse, but I was scared shitless. And every time a wave was coming near us and we were going into it, we would just hear from behind us, power, power! And we were just supposed to be, the moment we were hesitating, blade in the water and taking a big stroke into the wave. No matter what was going on, if you have your blade in the water and you're pulling, you have control of what's going on. So right into the breaking wave, taking a big stroke into it, paddle out of the way to make sure it doesn't hit you, and then hopefully you make it right onto the other side. The worst that could happen is you get surfed backwards, which happened to a couple of us, which is both fun and terrifying. And then the worst that could happen is you capsize, roll up, and then keep doing the same thing. But usually it's good to do it with other people, so that if something happens, they can rescue you, and you know, the usual safety things I always talk about: helmets, PFDs, gear, the right clothing, etc., etc. But that's what I've learned in the few times I've paddled into big surf. Very few times. Do you have any recommendations on books or videos of how to read and navigate from charts? I do. High Voltage Climber set. I do have 2 books that I've used for navigation. I don't remember what they're called, but what I'll do is I'll try to find them, and then I'll post. Cheers! Thank you for joining me. I'll post links under this video when it's done, and that way you can take a look. There were two books that I used when I was learning about navigation. So here's another really good point to bring up over this weekend. So I did a lot of learning on my own for navigation. Then I've taken courses on navigation, and so when we were our second day, we were working in the fog. We were working in navigation, and I could not believe how rusty I was with my navigation. Where we were supposed to figure our way from a buoy to a day marker, and everybody was working on this, and the instructor John was throwing out crap numbers on purpose to throw us off, and I completely bought into one of his numbers, and I made such basic mistakes that if it really was a case where we really had to figure out what we were doing and it was important for me to do it, if I had gotten it wrong, we would have been in a lot of trouble. And it's just really basic stuff. And once again, it was humbling to see you need to stay sharp with those skills, and you need to do it often. If you don't do it often, it leaves very quickly. And it was another excellent reminder taking this class and seeing that you need to continue doing it, and you need to keep learning from people, because if you don't, and you don't do it on your own, because, I mean, let's face it, most of us just go for day paddles, we go and have fun near where we are. We don't really need charts, we don't really need to navigate because we know our local areas well, but that shouldn't stop us from practicing and keeping our skills sharp. So that was yet another humbling moment, because my basics of navigation, I feel my foundation usually is very good, but just I made so many really silly mistakes, and it's just lack of practice, and it just made me think I need to do this more often. It's not good enough to just always have my compass with me. I really need to start doing more exercises. So that was absolutely excellent. I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad I got my information wrong. It was a great learning experience, and I will continue trying to fine-tune my navigation skills. Storm roll into it. Well, actually, Jay's right. There are some that think that if there's a wave coming at a certain time, I don't know how to do this yet. I've tried a couple of times, but in smaller waves, if a wave seems like might not be a good idea, you could always roll, and your body in the water sometimes will cause the kayak not to move around as much because you're kind of a big anchor underneath. If you happen to do that, always remember that you can get hurt by being upside down, so tuck all the way, and make sure you're in a location that either there's no rocks or it's more than deep enough for you to do that. But I have heard and I've seen videos of people, if they see a big wave coming or something, they'll just roll into the wave, and as the wave passes, they'll roll back up. I haven't done that in big stuff at all. I've only played doing that kind of stuff in very small waves, so I can't really say. There's a couple of other questions going on here. Any recommendations in finding, choosing an instructor? And Jonathan is helping out there. Excellent. Jonathan has Spinning Wood Studio covered, because actually he is much further north than I am. There were a couple of questions over here. Great tips from Chris. Great. Grab the green water. Hey, Ken. Grab the green water, then when going through the wave. Actually, Ken, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on grabbing the green water versus the white water? Because you were telling our group about it a bit, and I thought it was really, really great. I don't have a lot of experience with that because I'm usually not in a lot of waves, since we don't really get a lot near us. So Ken, if you want to explain that anymore, I will read your explanation if you type it in. Oh, actually, and Chris is asking, what is green water? There you go. See, this was one of the things that came up during the weekend, that to me, the term green water, I thought just meant calmer water versus more abrupt water, and Ken had a really great explanation for the entire thing. So I'm hoping he'll give us a rundown, and then I'll just read that and share with everybody. And if he doesn't, or I'm disconnected or whatever, then I'll just give you the synopsis of what I understood it to be. But Ken is a great guy and instructor. He is a great guy. I meant great guide and instructor as well, and I think he would have a great explanation for that. Come to Chile, the best for sea kayak. I really wish I could, and it's definitely on my list. I've seen some absolutely incredible photos and videos of kayaking in Chile. The bad thing about Chile is if I go to South America, I need to go to Argentina to visit my family, and I'm having a very hard time getting enough time off of work to go and visit the family, because if I go visit the family, I need to go and spend a really long time, and I just haven't been able to get a really long time to go. Hi from Ireland, new kayak and gear lab paddle tested today. Awesome! How did you like the gear lab paddle? Please let me know. And which model did you get? Okay, Ken hasn't answered yet. Ken, we need your answer on the green water. Okay, I'll just give a quick synopsis, and hopefully Ken can jump in and really explain it. But what they were saying is, so in the wave, you'll see the foam up top. That's usually full of air and very confused. Green water is the section beneath where it's still green and I don't know exactly how to explain it, but you'll have the foam up top. So what you want to do is you want to grab that part of the wave, because if you put your paddle into the confused foam, it just won't give you that support. It is very confused. It might actually pull your paddle down, where if you put it into green room, that I don't know, Sam. But I think the idea was that if you see a little bit of foam up top and you see green beneath, that's where you want to put in your paddle. You don't want to just put it up on top. What I have found, and this has only worked for me in smaller stuff, I haven't really tried in bigger stuff because I haven't been into bigger stuff in a long time, but, oh, your comment was too long! Ken had the whole comment. Okay, maybe copy-paste it into a couple of smaller comments, and I'll read that. Okay, let's see. Okay. He's getting it to you. Thank you. Buenas tardes, Tata. Thank you for joining me. The best surfing lesson I had was in non-breaking waves. They stand up but not break. That Gretzky is absolutely right. So the best lesson I had as well was that one time, and I shared that clip with Dale Williams, where he took us to absolutely beautiful swells, and the problem was I was such a novice at that point that I couldn't, one, appreciate it, two, they felt big. They were 4 or 5 footers, and we were just really cruising down those faces, but they were gorgeous. It was really deep there, and it was absolutely perfect, stunning surf conditions. This was in South Carolina, and yes, since then I've only surfed in small, either calmer waves or some breaking waves, and breaking waves are never as forgiving as the like nice non-breaking clear. And as sea kayakers, we don't want breaking waves. We don't want waves that stand up. We want kind of flat, nice swells so that we have a surface to play on and it's easy for us to stay towards the top. Surfers like big, tall, vertical waves because then they're able to carve sideways. That's not what we do. However, small boats, play boats, whatever, surf boats, the little ones, flat ones on the bottom, those love other types of waves because they can do whatever they want. But us in sea kayaks, we want nice, long swells that we can easily surf on. Okay, so Ken is explaining. White is aerated and filled with air, so your paddle doesn't grab anything. Green is regular water that will offer support for your paddle to push against. So that's exactly what we were trying to do this weekend. Oh, and the other thing I was mentioning is what has worked for me a little bit in smaller surf is when I get broached and I go on the side and then I do a brace into the wave. Always remember You want to edge into the wave while you're doing your brace. Don't do high braces if you can avoid it because you can hurt your shoulders. Low braces. What I have found is as I'm broached and I see if my blade is diving, I'll just do a bit of sculling into that wave and my blade will continue to stay upright. Sculling seems to be the answer to so many things. If you're upside down and you're having a hard time with your roll, try sculling as your roll to come up. If you scull correctly and you have good technique, you will always come up or you will always stay afloat. It's a great, great exercise to work on. Okay, thank you, Ken. Sorry to have to make you retype that whole thing. There were a couple of questions I think here. Wooden boathouse, Kayak 225 carbon fiber, best paddle ever. An active stroke going into a wave gives you stability like an outrigger. Absolutely. See, so that's another great point that I never thought of. So we were in confused waters. Our kayaks were moving around. So instinctively, I just had my paddle into a low brace to stay upright. And John was telling me over and over to stop doing that. Simply place my blade in the water as if I was going to take a forward stroke and then just keep that as either a forward or a reverse stroke. Keep that paddle in place. Keep it connected in the water. And that way, I was using it, like you said, as an outrigger. It was giving me control of the situation rather than just avoiding falling over by bracing myself. And he's completely right, but I'm going to have to retrain my body to do that. It felt very strange at first. Then after a while, I started understanding it, but I kept noticing myself going back into that low brace because I've worked on that for so long. That's my go-to. That's muscle memory. So once again, the idea behind tonight's topic, continue taking lessons, continue paddling with people that know more than you. When you go on a paddle with them, when you sign up for a class, shut up and listen. They always have great tips to offer. And don't just listen to the instructors. Listen to all of the other paddlers you're paddling with. Everyone will have something worth learning. And it's fantastic. I love that the community is always willing to share information, to make ourselves better paddlers, because really the idea is just to get better and have more fun. Luciano, hola, ¿qué tal Daniel? Gracias por estar conmigo. ¿Cómo estuvo el viaje? Me tenés que contar. Daniel in Mexico, he just paddled from, if I'm not mistaken, from Coatzacoalcos to Veracruz, and I think they drove him back, so he was only he paddled one way, and then I believe he drove back. And you gotta tell us about that trip, and I'm sure you're gonna be putting out a video about it soon. I'll bet you put out the video for that before I put out the video from our trip. I mean, we can put some money on that, and I'll bet you would win. Ken, the forward stroke is your most supportive stroke. See, that's something that I would have never guessed, because I always go into, I think of a supportive stroke as a brace. And this weekend I was corrected, where the forward stroke is an extremely supportive stroke. I would use this forward stroke as a supportive stroke whenever I was paddling into waves, whenever I was paddling in confused water. But then anytime I felt a little unstable, I would always go to a brace. And it was very interesting, as Ken said, for me to start thinking about the forward stroke as a supported stroke. So, absolutely awesome to do that. If you have any other questions, please feel free to type them in. That way we can chat live. If you're just joining us on YouTube, there is a text box below, and we can chat. If you're joining on Instagram, same thing, please type in any questions, or, I mean, it's been awesome to watch some of you guys answering each other's questions. That's really cool to see. But let's see, what else happened this weekend that was good? So I took a swim, which was excellent. I got over my fear of rocks, which was excellent. My first time rock gardening, that was amazing. Oh, here's a couple of other things that I learned when it came to surfing. Turns out that when I try to catch a wave, I just overcompensate and always go way, way out in front of the wave because I get so eager. I take big strokes, I move my kayak around, and I wind up making my bow dig all the time. Instead, I need to be more careful, pay attention to the wave, wait for the wave to pick me up, and then try to stay in the right place on the wave. It's so interesting that I spend so much time thinking, oh man, there's a wave, go catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it, instead of actually listening to and feeling what the wave is asking me to do and then trying to find the best place on the wave. So my go-to was always paddle, 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 try to catch the wave, go down the wave. Kelsey is yelling out skeg. So I don't know if you guys know, but some kayaks, the skegs are under tension. Some of kayaks, the skegs are not. So that means that some skegs, if you happen to leave them down and then you drag your kayak onto the beach, they will go right back and they will not hurt any of the system. That's not on purpose. There are other skegs, like my old Wilderness Systems Zephyr, where it was under compression, I believe is the term, where once it was down, if you pushed on the skeg, it actually bent the wire that was pushing it down, so you always had to be careful for it. So Jonathan kept coming out of the water with his skeg down, and people would yell out that his skeg was down. And it turned into a running joke, but the funny thing is, in his kayak, it didn't actually matter. The skeg would have just gone up by itself. But then it got a little bit out of control, and it was very funny. So that's one thing to watch out for. If your kayak is, I believe the term is, if your skeg system is under compression, so that means if you push the skeg, there's a lot of resistance. Always make sure when you get out of the water, put your skeg away before you get out, because you can hurt the slider, just like I did on my Zephyr, and that was no fun. Eventually, I just had to give up on my skeg altogether. I make kink photos. Thank you, sir. I hope that's a compliment. John actually had me learn to rock garden with my eyes closed so I can feel the water. See, that's an excellent point. There were a couple of times that he had us close our eyes when he was having us think about stuff. And it was really interesting, and it was exactly what you're saying. I think actually he made me jump in the water to do the same thing, so it was more about feeling and then getting over my fear, rather than... Because when you're sitting in a place and you see water's calm over here, water's breaking over a rock over there and looks crazy, it's very hard not looking over and just saying, oh crap, it's going to suck me in. When you're completely in a safe place over here, and all you're doing is you're just bobbing up and down. So that's a very good point. Favorite music? I don't know what my favorite music is. I can tell you favorite songs. I'll come up with a list for next time. Tell Jonathan his skeg is down. See, now Ken is also jumping on that. It was, so yes, if your skeg is under compression, make sure to put it up before you get out of the water. So what else? There was something else that I also wanted to discuss, and now I forgot. Chris, ever get taken off guard from a wave and didn't take a breath before going under? I would think that it would be pretty scary, hardly any air while having to set up. You'd be surprised how, I don't want to say versatile, but the moment you feel you're going under, your body instinctively is going to try to take a breath, and as you're getting knocked over, you still have a little bit of time. Every time I've gotten knocked over, or I was upside down for longer than I thought in water, it really turned out that I still had plenty of air to hang out for a while. And if I didn't, you could always just wet exit, make sure your paddle's in one hand and your boat is in the other. Don't let go of those. Unless you're in really crazy waves, and it just, if it's too hard to hold on, just let go. It's better. Don't get hurt. But I don't think, even in the scariest of times, I've always been able to at least set up tried to go for a roll, failed, but when I failed, I was able to get my head out of the water, take another breath, and then just calm down, take my time, set up, and then come up. The other thing that's been helpful, two things have been helpful. One is just practicing being capsized, and I mean in lots of different conditions. Uh, Once again, during this weekend, most of us wound up upside down at some point. And it's funny, with my group, a lot of us do like rolling, and we try rolling in the winter months, so we challenge ourselves to roll in bad conditions on purpose. But I know a lot of paddlers that will just go out weekend after weekend, day after day, and never take a swim, never do a recovery or get back in their kayak, never try a roll unless it's in a pool condition. And the thing is, it's really, really good to try rolling in different situations. I remember I went with a group of friends. We rented for the weekend a house out in Rhode Island. I can't remember where it was. And I took the kayak out. Conditions were not good enough for us to paddle. My wife and I both took our kayaks, and we thought, okay, maybe one morning we can go for a paddle. Conditions were terrible the entire time, but one day it was really windy, nasty weather, but right next to the shore there were a bunch, it was wind waves, just very, very little, maybe I'd say one with occasional 2-footers, very short periods, very confused, but not dangerous in any way, and I was right next to the coast. And what I did is I went out and started practicing rolling in that and seeing how the little waves were pulling on my kayak from different sides and what it felt like to just close my eyes and get knocked over on purpose. And you would actually be surprised. One, if you're not worried about the environment and you just loosen your hips and let the kayak do its thing, how easy it is to stay upright. And two, if you take your time, it's very easy to come back up. I think sometimes it could be 90% mental, where you're thinking you don't have enough breath, or, oh crap, I better set up quickly, or... So, two things to do. Practice being upside down as much as possible, and then the second thing is get used to, if the moment you feel like you're going under, or you might you might get knocked over, commit to going under, and go in already in setup position. That'll be good for not wasting time getting into the setup position, but also for protecting your head, because part of the setup position is so that when you're capsized, your head is tucked as much as you can and trying to be away from obstacles underneath you. So instinctively, if you're falling over, the first thing you should think of is paddle against a kayak so that if a wave comes, it'll be less likely it'll get ripped from your hands. If you just fall and you're just trying to hold on to the paddle and the wave is strong, the paddle will either get tossed, will break. There's so many different things. However, if you go and it's just pressed against the side of your kayak, it's a lot less likely that will happen. And if you're tucked forward, same thing. You'll be less likely to get hurt. Your head is as close to the deck as possible, and you're already in setup position. So it works for two different reasons. Feels like forever underwater. Absolutely. There's that one video I put out where I talk about conditions, practicing rolling in the pool versus practicing rolling in the real world. And I was actually, no, I think it was the one where rolling in a lot of wind. That was the first time that I rolled in like 20 to 30 knot wind. And I had never experienced the wind not letting me come up on one side. And in that one, I failed rolls twice on both sides, and I kept alternating what side to come up. That felt like minutes, and I have the footage. It was a couple of seconds. I don't know how long it was, maybe 4 seconds, 5 seconds at most, that I was under. And I even got to take a breath in one of the failed attempts. Still, when that was happening, I thought, oh my God, what's going on? And you watch it later, and it's not that big a deal. That's how it feels, but I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. The better your roll is. And then the better your roll is, the less time you spend upside down. I think all of it is just a cascade of getting used to it, getting comfortable. Same thing as I felt very uncomfortable at first being near the rocks, and then as the day progressed, working with this fantastic group of paddlers, I felt more and more comfortable. A couple of other questions. Take a big breath. Wind Boathouse says, take a big breath as you power into a wave. If you capsize, you'll have a full set of lungs to set up and roll. That's a great idea and a great suggestion. So as you paddle into the wave, you take a big breath, and then if you wind up capsizing, you already have a full breath of air. That's actually a great tip. Thank you, Wind Boathouse. Here we have someone saying that there's paddlers in his area, or her area. I'm sorry, the image is so small I can't tell. I apologize. Paddlers in the area that have been paddling for 30 years without being in the sea, I think. They mean without swimming. I asked them what they do if they capsize. They had no answer. But that's the thing, is a lot of people consider paddling just going out for the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with, you don't have to learn to roll in order to enjoy being out of the water, especially people that like to fish or they just want to go in a wreck boat into the lake. Completely fine. But for whitewater kayakers, for sea kayakers, the good thing about rolling is you need to understand that capsizing is just part of paddling, and then the more comfortable you are with it, the better paddler you are. So, for example, this weekend there was a lot of work on turning your kayak. Okay, thank you. A lot of work on turning your kayak, especially turning your kayak with edging and not using corrective strokes, just using your forward stroke and using edging to turn your kayak. If you're not worried about going over, your edging is going to be so much better because you edge too much, you capsize, you roll back up, you keep paddling, no big deal. But if you're not used to that, you might not edge at all, and then turning the kayak is so much harder. I saw some stuff coming in. Jay says that he tries to count to 10 in his head for a sense of time. See, that's a great idea. When we're teaching to roll, we do the same thing in the pool. We say when you're upside down, count, wait a little bit, let the kayak settle. So that means when you capsize, a lot of times you don't capsize all the way, and then people set up to roll. They're not opening their eyes upside down. They can't tell that they haven't capsized completely, and then they start to roll when they're still kind of sideways. And that means your roll's going to fail if you're not completely in place, or if you think you're ready for the roll, but you're not set up correctly. Once again, I'm going to slip in this same tip. That's what I like about sculling. If you can do a sculling roll, it doesn't matter where you start. You continue sculling until you're out of the water. If you do it correctly, if you do it efficiently, if your scull is nice and slow and even, then your kayak needs to rotate until it's out of the water. That's just how it goes. Okay, so we've been at this for a while. If you have any other questions, last minute questions, please drop them below. If you're on Instagram, down on the bottom. If you're on YouTube, you can type them into the chat room and we can wrap it up. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm going to try to do this every Monday at 9 p.m. if I can. I will always announce it ahead of time, and I'll let people know in case they want to join and have a chat about it. It's been really fun chatting with people about all these things, and what I've really enjoyed, Wind Boathouse. I was told to set up and then wait for it to go quiet, then roll. That is a great way to look at it. I completely agree. Especially in waves. You fall, whatever, just let it pass, wait for things to settle, then set up for your roll and roll. I've been really enjoying these chats because, like last time with Kayak Life joining in and giving tips, actually, I tried one of his tips this weekend. I took two things I did. One was, because I took my drone with me, and I placed it in I knew that I was going to be playing around in some waves, so I didn't want it knocking around, so what I did is I placed it on the bottom as close to the cockpit as possible, and then I used a paddle float, inflated it, so that it would keep it in place and not move it. And I did two things, two different tips that Kayak Life gave. One was using an inflated paddle float inside of the hatch to keep things in place, and two, because of the weight of that and the batteries, I put it at the bottom, so that acted a little bit of a ballast, so when I was upside down, it was keeping it in place up against the bottom of my kayak, so my hull was heavier, so as I tried to roll, it was actually going to help me, where normally, if that wasn't in place, it would just fall to the deck of the kayak and not help me at all. And also that moving around would probably hurt the drone. But because it was up against the hull of the kayak when upside down, not only was it not getting banged around, but that little bit of weight probably helped a little bit in being a ballast and helping me turn the kayak upside down. So those were really fantastic tips we got from last week. So what I was saying is, I love that not only hopefully I'm giving tips that can help other people, but we have other coaches and mentors that sometimes join in and can give tips to us as well. And I really love that chain of, I love giving tips and then also getting to learn lots of new things so that I can try them out next time out of the water. All right, so people are just giving thumbs up. I'm going to close it up here. I will see you next time, next Monday, 9 p.m. Hopefully we will have an interview with Vagabondist. I'm very excited. She is a guide that goes all over the world, and the idea is I want her to pick her brain when it comes to how to dress appropriately when paddling in really cold water, and hopefully we're able to pull that off. And also I really want to talk about that topic next time. Thank you for the tips. Have a nice week. Thank you guys for joining me. Good night, Jay. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining me. See you next week, next Monday, 9 p.m. Bye, guys. Gaby, te encantó el video en Playland. Buenísimo. Cuando vengas te tengo que llevar para que lo veas. Okay, I'll see you guys all next week. Have a good one.